of the problems with the digital gold narrative is that most investors don't have allocations to gold, right? So if you went, and I had this conversation with a very well-off gentleman recently where I was trying to explain to him, and you almost reflexively revert back to digital gold. And he says, well, I don't own any gold. Why would I own gold? I want equity. I want yield. I want interest. I want all these things. And I think the framing is probably better in terms of an alternative monetary network of the internet, because people love tech stocks. In our time, they are absolutely huge fans of tech companies and financial infrastructure and the next generation fintech. They're really excited about those. They think it's like cutting edge, and I think Bitcoin is that cutting edge. So, years ago, Andreas Antonopoulos coined this term, the Internet of Money. I thought it was really effective rhetorically because it's bootstrapping what everybody knew to be the case, which was the internet was going to be the next big thing in the 90s. It's bootstrapping the idea of this monetary communications network with Bitcoin and all the potential for that could come from that. So I think the selling point is to explain to folks that this is not necessarily a system that is going to replace the dollar or kill the dollar. Michael Saylor talks about how it's a system that can promote the dollar. It can increase dollar proliferation for the world through an open source financial network of open source financial foundation, as we talked about earlier, for transacting value globally. And there really are a lot of possibilities for second and third layer solutions on Bitcoin that I think have yet to be explored. So that's the way I try to frame it to folks. I think this is an alternative monetary network that will work alongside and inside of traditional finance, and it will be something that will grow for the next 100 years. And people should have an allocation to that in a world that is saturated with exposure to stocks and bonds.
Yeah. And you mentioned Saylor, and I'm glad you did, Joe, because I've been watching from afar as to like what Saylor's up to in terms of, it feels as if he's like shorting the dollar and being able to buy Bitcoin. And it's like some sort of speculative attack, but I think he's very careful about the message he is relaying, and has certainly beaten the drum on the digital property side. If you've got some sort of easy way to explain what Saylor is up to, because it's something that we've tried to explain here a few times, would you be able to share that in terms of how he's using his stock to buy more Bitcoin?
Yeah. So the simplest way to think about it is that he has access to something that you and I don't have. He has access to an asset that he can effectively print. Okay. And when I say print, I mean that in a loose way. I mean, he has the ability to issue shares of stock. Okay. And the shares of stock have to be absorbed by the market, and the market's going to pay a fair market value for the shares. Okay. And what is the fair market value for the shares? Well, the fair market value of the shares is not the profitability of the business. Okay. Because the actual profitability of the MicroStrategy business, it's trading at significant multiples of what the actual income, the cash flow it's generating, right? So most investors look at a company and they say, what's it worth? And they look at cash flow and, return. That's how they're assessing it. I think MicroStrategy is basically an ETF holding vehicle for a lot of folks that don't yet have the institutional cover to buy the Bitcoin ETF. So people are just buying exposure to MicroStrategy because of all the Bitcoin it holds, which becomes a virtuous loop, right? They're buying Bitcoin to buy a stock. They're buying the stock to buy a company that holds Bitcoin. The Bitcoin's appreciating in value, which is appreciating the share value, which is allowing them to issue more stock. That more stock at a higher level can let them buy more Bitcoin, which then, if it keeps going up, if the price keeps continuing, that is increasing the stock. Okay. So you have this kind of positive feedback loop here where you can continue to extract money from willing participants, use it to buy Bitcoin. If Bitcoin still keeps going up, which it's going up forever, Laura, as you said, that it basically creates a perpetual motion machine, right? A perpetual machine where he continues to basically have that unlimited access to funds to buy Bitcoin. Now, what could happen? There are some negative things, which I know people don't want to focus on that, but there are some things that could happen conceivably. It could draw scrutiny from regulators, and you have to keep that in the back of your mind. It also could be a situation where if there's, I know it's unlikely, but there could be a significant drawdown in the Bitcoin price, and that could put him in a real difficult perspective from a balance sheet perspective with respect to the debt. It wouldn't really hurt the share value because the share value would just be discounted by the lower price of Bitcoin. I think from my standpoint, I think if you are a MicroStrategy shareholder, you have to have in the back of your mind that there is a potential at some point this draws scrutiny from regulators, and that's probably the biggest threat to what he's currently doing.